around the globe come together
to grow, collaborate,
and expand their business.
Where we take our individual fires
and put them together and make one big fire.
This is the Honey Badger Nation.
Hello, hello. Welcome,
Hi.
Mylene. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing excellent. Doing excellent. It's a blustery fall day here. I'm in Fairfax. You're in Victoria, Canada, right?
I am, and we've got in Canadian Celsius, it's probably 18, 19, so I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit.
I don't know either, but yeah, the temps are dropping a little bit, and you know, you're with eXp Realty. You work on a team, is that right?
I do. Yeah, I work on the Patricia Katiki team in Victoria.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
We met last year at eXp Con in Vegas. Great time, by the way. It was an amazing event.
Hard to top.
Hard to top. It was a lot of fun. It's coming up again soon, and you know, we were catching up the other day, and just thought I'd come on here with you to talk about some interesting sales we've been having. You know, you were mentioning to me that you do buyer sales virtually, or at least some of them that way. And I just had one on the list side that was the buyer that came in was never even saw the house. So I thought it'd be a great thing to discuss and kind of talk about, because some people, you know, they might think that it works a certain way, and you know, just I think it'd be great to hear the story of exactly, you know, how these things transpire and go down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I love kind of those virtual type of sales. Like, it's not uncommon for me to have a buyer that will, you know, they physically see the property for the first time when they get handed keys, and they're moving in that day, right? And it kind of, I was saying to you earlier, it was kind of born out of a COVID necessity, but to me, it's a really nice way to sell, and it can solve some problems in real estate, right? You can do real estate a bit more remote than I think people have expect that you can, you know?
Sure. Yeah. And do you guys use, we do the 3D Matterport, or you know, that's kind of a brand name, but you know, just different 3D modeling that, you know, people can walk through basically online. Do you guys do that in Canada too?
Well, I mean, it's an option that's available. I personally, it's not my preference. I don't think it really gives you the full experience of walking through the house. So like the big thing for me that I focus on is video previews, right? So if I have a client, let's say, you know, the types of clients that I have that buy virtually are typically investors. And so they don't care about the physical house so much. And in the same way as somebody who's kind of buying their dream house, or I'll have someone who's having to relocate for like a job or family issues, or sort of on a tighter timeline, and maybe can't get to, like I live we're on an island, technically we're on Vancouver Island. So flying into Victoria getting to Victoria can be a little bit trickier. It was really valuable too when the market was super hot during COVID, and you know, sometimes a house was only on the market for 8 hours, so only one partner could see the house, or you kind of didn't really have enough time, and so those were really good opportunities for video previews.
Wow, like 8 hours, huh? Yeah.
Our market went a little nuts. Yeah. Man.
You know, I know that we had super low inventory here, and things were super nutty too. And yeah, I wasn't sure about, you know, Canada necessarily. So you guys
last year was crazy. This year we're at a more balanced market now in Victoria, which is nice. We're seeing more listings, and the buyers have kind of have calmed down a bit. Obviously, the interest rate hikes for us are slowing the market down, and so it's a nicer, balanced market. You know, we're going back to getting to negotiate a couple weeks worth of conditions, and like, if the hot water tank is busted, we can like go back to the seller and ask that they take care of it. Whereas before, you know, you just weren't negotiating on those things.
You know, and it's really funny you say that, because on my listing sale, we're actually replacing the hot water tank on it right there. So yeah,
right?
yeah, that is happening. Yeah.
I was gonna say the last I think I saw the oldest hot water tank I've ever seen out in the wild. On my last inspection, it was a 1993.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
What?
you're like, you need to replace that. Yeah, fixer upper.
Well, that's when I graduated high school. So, you know, yeah,
Pretty
kind of old.
recently.
Yeah, you know, tell me a little bit about the buyer sale itself on your end, and the representation of that. So these folks are generally, I mean, out of country, just not able to do it for some reason, not able to come in town. I mean, you know, for a lot of people, I think it's just kind of, you know, blows their mind to think that they're going to buy something as large as a house, completely virtual, and never even having seen it before. So take me through that a little bit, just like what you do to, you know, make sure that you're contractually protecting your clients, that you're making them comfortable, that they're getting everything that they need in order to make this kind of decision.
Yeah, I mean, and it obviously starts like right at the beginning, right? When you're in the buyer's consultation phase. I think I try to focus also on relocations. Like I really enjoy these types of sales, so I try to focus on them. I think setting the expectation that like, hey, we may find your perfect house and you might not have time to come here and physically see it. You know, if we can answer all your questions and you felt confident enough about it, would you be willing to write sight unseen or even remove conditions sight unseen? And so you kind of ease them into the idea at the start. And then I sort of explain that like my job with the video previews is to give them, I'm going to treat it just like they were there with me. I'm going to walk them through the property in the same way. And I'm going to point out things that maybe aren't obvious on camera. And I'll take a video of the neighborhood and what my drive into that property was like. You know, one of the video previews, for example, the house happened to be by a ferry terminal. So when you're driving in on the street, you know, there's signs saying like caution, kids playing. Which for my client would have been a deal breaker, right? So you have to give them all the intangibles, the sounds, the smells, the feelings. Like when you're walking through the video preview, I'm like, hey, this room feels creepy, you know, or like, ooh, I don't, you know, I'm not liking opening this basement, or like, you know, in video, this wallpaper looks really good, but in person, it needs a bit of love, right? So you treat it like they're there, and you talk about even things like what the driveway up is, right? There's a lot of intangibles that you don't necessarily realize. And then as far as the sale goes, I mean, if we get to the point of writing an offer, depending on how long we can negotiate for conditions, I think you either try to get them to physically fly out and come see it, or you're like, hey, do you have a friend or a family member, a coworker? Most people are moving to a town for a specific reason. There is somebody here who can also be feet on the ground or eyes, you know, like a second set of eyes, and you try to get them to come as well. And if they can't, I mean, it'll happen that there's nobody here kind of available, or it's not that, you know, for investors, it's maybe a little bit less important to have that second set of eyeballs that are coming in. But yeah, you just kind of like slowly move them along the process, and you're giving them all the information you have. So it's always nerve-wracking when they do show up and you're handing them keys in hand, and you know, they're opening that door for the first time. But I've never had a client be like, oh,
I hope you like it. Here you go.
Yeah, right. Like I've never had a client who's said to me like, oh, this is different than, like, this is very different than I expected. No one's felt that there's been any big surprises. So the way those video previews just become an incredible tool, and even being able to FaceTime a client as you walk them through the property, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, agreed. I mean, you know, and as on the list side of things, I know it's always a hesitation too, just if the buyer, you know, hasn't seen the property, it could, you know, you might get into a contract and they just back out hard, just because they're just not that invested into it. And so there is some of that, to some element to that. I know it was a decision for us and my client on our end. And we had multiple offers and we had different backups and whatnot, you know, and I gotta say, I mean, you know, props to these buyers, because they're international. You know, I'm in the DC area, so a lot of times, you know, it's not unusual for us to get foreign diplomat type folks, or just,
Sure.
you know, stationed abroad, you know, and they know the area, they otherwise know the area, but, you know, they just happen to be, you know, living outside or internationally, so far away that it's just not real feasible to come in. You know, and these folks were paying all cash. I mean, it was, you know, it was really a very, very strong contract. You know, that being said, you know, it's always a decision for the seller, just because, you know, if somebody actually hasn't physically stepped foot into the house, you know, that could be, you know, they just might not be that sold on it too. So that's part of it.
Well, and I mean, I suppose it also depends how you're writing your offer, right? Like, is
Right.
that something you're going to declare in your offer? Are you going to make your offer conditional to seeing the property, right? Whereas and again, maybe this is some differences in Canada and the States where, like, you know, if my client's going to walk away from this deal, it's going to be over financing or something in the inspection or the strata documents. So whether I have to have an additional clause stating conditional to the buyer seeing it, like, that's not why we're going to be pulling out of this deal. So there is, you know, there's ways in the contract with how you want to approach it.
Yeah, I mean here, and yes, it does vary by state here, you know, and even MLS region. However, most of the time, there is some sort of way that a buyer can just exit, you know, the deal, and that, you know, and I remember during the height of COVID too, in like you were saying, houses are on the market for 8 hours. I mean, we just didn't have time to show properties to everybody. So we, you know, and we would let the agents know that too. When we'd just write it and say, hey, you know, we're going to look at it, post it. Once we get it under contract, we contractually protect the buyer so that, you know, they can come in and see it and do their thing. So there's that too.
Yeah. Well, and it's so dependent on, you know, like it's house per house, right? How you're going to approach sort of the clauses on that. Yeah. Yeah,
and just in the competitive nature of the deal, I think has a lot to do with it as well. Yeah, I mean, all these things, and you know, I think this does kind of lend itself to why an agent is necessary for these things, and just imagine the level of trust they place in you, you know, for this, just to be candid about it and tell them the truth and you know, have the right inspections and in the right, you know, the right information coming out to their side, so that they you know, they can make the best decision for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, and maybe that's one of my favorite parts about it, right? Is it requires so much trust from the buyer that, like, it's nice to know that I can give them the level of detail where somebody can feel that they're confident buying sight unseen.
Right. You know, and on the sell side, you know, the same thing too. You know, typically, like my sale was cash, so we're going to get a proof of funds. You know, and that's pretty typical on most transactions. You know, we're also going to you know, ask a lot of questions, right, and just see how serious they really are, because you know, the last thing you want is to kind of get under contract with somebody, and even if, like in my case, you know, you have a backup buyer. If you're going to come back to that backup buyer, it's really just going to put you at a competitive disadvantage negotiation wise. You know, it's just not something you really want to do. So to make that decision is really important. And, you know, on your buy side, I feel like it's a matter of selling that to the list side agent, you know, as well, and make sure that, hey, we have the best buyer, this is the best terms for you.
Yeah. Well, and even if I haven't, you know, if the client hasn't physically been in here, they know enough, like they've walked through the property, they've been through it, right? One of the other tools I'll use too when I am on the sell side, I will video preview my own properties and send them to agents who have clients that are like, you know, if we couldn't get them in for a showing or out of town. And so I also, you know, I feel like might as well use that tool to try to attract some buyers.
Now, do you use pre-inspections there, or is that common in your area?
So yeah, in the height of COVID, we did a lot of them, right? So you get a nice, clean, unconditional offer. If we're dealing with a strata property that has maybe some upcoming concerns, we'll do it. But the last, you know, I had 2 listings in June, July where I did a pre-inspection, and both the offers that came in were conditional to inspection. So the market for Victoria has kind of shifted where it's not necessarily worth investing the pre-inspection with your listings right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, on this one, I do it pretty routinely on my listings, and I just found that's helped out quite a bit. Especially, really any buyer, but especially one that is as we call a virtual buyer, hasn't actually physically been in the home. They can always get their own inspection, but it's really good to have that, because as we know, statistically, that's where the biggest fallout is on a real estate contract, is during that inspection period.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So that just something that we do too on that is I mentioned the 3D tours, and you do your own. I think from photos, or whether or not it has 3D walkthroughs, but if you have your own walkthrough and you're taking them through it on FaceTime or whatnot, I mean that's got to go a long ways with them, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that's my number one tool for selling digitally, is those video walkthroughs, the previews. Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, you're like, the people love the Matterport. Like, people that are browsing listings love looking at them. I think for me, it's just a personal preference. I'm kind of indifferent to them, but the amount of clients that I have that'll go through the Matterport too, right? So obviously, I mean, there's some value there.
Right. Yeah. So you were mentioning too, this is kind of getting to be a hotter time of year. Is that right for you?
Like for the market, yeah. I mean, we normally see a bigger push in kind of September. September was a little bit quieter. October's starting off. The end of September got a bit busier, which is nice. We'll see what happens. Normally our inventory in December is really, really low, but we're just hitting kind of a balanced market, which is great.
Right.
It's nice. I mean, it's nice to see a balanced market.
Yeah, same. I get questioned. I'm sure you have been too. Just kind of all year, people say, "Oh, you're in real estate. Oh, it must be wonderful. It's so hot out there." So like, well, actually, it's kind of nice that it's been more normalized lately. It was so nutty that it's really tough to get around with that. But now things are just more equilibrium, just kind of a normal keel with pace, and it's just not so frothy and nutty out there.
Well, and I keep saying that everyone sort of lived their first like non-COVID-y summer, right? We had pretty good weather. It was hard not to be out and about. So it was nice, even as agents, to have a bit of a calmer summer, so we could also have lives. Yeah. I mean, it's really, and it was just like you were saying, like selling in 8 hours. I mean, it's really tough to make big decisions that way. And I mean, personally, I have a hold period on listings, so I'll list on maybe a given Wednesday or Thursday, and then do offer reviews on Monday, and then that seems to give it time to marinate in the market, give people a chance to get their offers in, and do our negotiations from there. But not everybody does that. Some people just take the first offer in the door too. Yeah, I mean, I that's the strategy I use too. I'll have a waiting period, and if I'm expecting multiples, right, you'll have the pre-inspection. You kind of have everything lined up for the buyer so they can give you the cleanest offer. But yeah, we had periods where properties would go up and just immediately you couldn't even get through for a showing. There was one I competed on that, like, it listed on the Tuesday morning. I was booked to go in at 2 p.m. She's like, "Hi, I have an accepted offer." And I'm like, "Well, it was 3. What are you talking about? Like, you just put it up." Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's yeah, there are some knee-jerk reactions out there, and in my opinion, I mean, arguably the sellers are leaving money on the table if they're taking something too fast. That's why we just like to let it gel a little bit. From a seller standpoint, you're losing most all your negotiation power once you sign a contract. So it pays to be a little choosy on the sell side. On the buy side, yeah, you certainly want to get it into wraps like quickly.
Yeah. I mean, that buyer's agent did a good job for their client, probably. Right. It's annoying for the rest of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what are
Make
some
my
tips
job
out
harder.
there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, now, if I'm a virtual buyer, if I'm not going to be in your area and I'm buying a home, like what are some things to keep in mind? What are some tips that you can give to make me feel good about the process?
Like for the actual buyer, for the agent trying to.
Yeah, for the buyer. Like if I'm coming to you, I'm a client, you know, and I'm you know, in I don't know, in Australia or something, and
Yep.
I'd like to move to BC and you know, go to a super beautiful area like you guys have there and get into a house. And I know that your price points are quite high, and so it's not chump change, you know, out there. So what, you know, what do you tell me on the buy side, like how to, you know, how to navigate that? Because I can imagine for most folks, it's probably a new thing for them. They probably haven't done this before, right?
No, right. And it's certainly, it's not going to work for every buyer, right? I think you have to be a buyer who's comfortable relinquishing a little bit of like control in this, who's either been through the process before or understands that this is like, most people aren't doing this if this is their forever home, right? You're not shopping for your forever home virtually. You're going to go in and see it. But I think like the video is going to give you as close to the experience of walking through it as you can, right? And making sure that I'm capturing the intangibles so that you're feeling there's going to be no big surprises when you get to the property. The video, the FaceTime, having kind of the other set of eyes on, you know, on the property. It's funny. That's a good question. I don't know how to answer that question. I think
it's
yeah.
probably a lot of the things that you've gone over are, you know, like hey, you know, we're gonna number one, you know, in your consult, you're talking about how you're contractually protecting their interests, right? Because there really kind of comes to a couple different things here. You know, there's the condition of the home and the aesthetic feel of it. You know, do they like it at all?
Yeah.
And
does
then,
it fit the goals?
Yeah, does it fit the goals? Are you able to do it? And just know that, like, hey, you know, we can get this under contract for you, and there's gonna be ways that if something really goes awry or you just don't like it, you can back out. And then, like you mentioned, like you know, there could be some period there, maybe not always, but there's could be some time where they could fly out, make a trip, or have somebody local that they know to come and see it. And if not, you know, you've got plenty of videos too, right?
Well, and sorry, that's a really good point. Like right now our market kind of allows for 10 to 14 days of conditions. You could maybe get 21 days, right? So you're like, can you get yourself, sorry, can you get yourself down here or somebody here, right? And yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's pretty rare. It does happen. It's pretty rare that you're unconditionally writing on these types of properties. I suppose when the market's hot, you know, the chances are higher, but ultimately the goal is, and I think for people having that option to fly down and come see it as well, sometimes actually alleviates the need for them to come down, which is odd enough.
Now, do you have we call it earnest money in this area? That, you know, essentially, you know, you put up some amount, typically 1 or 2% of the total purchase price would go into an escrow account that's fully refundable. Now, and that's in my particular area. I actually just learned in some states it's not, like, you will lose it all. so be sure and check with your agent on that. But do you guys have, you know, something called earnest money or some deposit?
So we have a deposit. We don't do earnest money the same way that you guys do. But essentially in Victoria, the way that we operate, you can write an offer with conditions. And like, let's say you're doing a $10,000 deposit. You actually don't pay the deposit until you've fully removed your conditions. So you as the buyer in Victoria can get into like a contract of purchase and sale. You can tie up the property for kind of, you know, for however long, do your due diligence and walk away if you needed to based on one of your conditions. And you actually haven't put any money on the table for the property, but you probably spent money on inspections and documents and whatnot.
Sure. Yeah. Money well spent too, just to know what you're getting and understand the condition of it. Well, that's really good to know. I mean, that, you know, that would make me feel a lot better, you know, as a buyer until I was able to fully check it out. And, you know, I mean, it's a big purchase. Right? Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I really appreciate it. You know, thanks for sharing all this stuff because, you know, you and I are in eXp Realty, and, you know, with eXp all 50 states and 22 countries and counting now. I mean, it's still globally expanding. The what we call is the virtual buyer is becoming more and more common out there.
Yeah.
And, I think this message is good for any folks out there, interested in doing that on really either side of the coin. If you're a seller, if you have reluctance about that, know that is definitely becoming a thing now. And, on the buy side, just know that even, Canada, America, different areas around, like, hey, we can help you with that, contractually protect you, make you feel, comfortable, know that, we're giving you all the information to make an informed decision so that you can complete your contract and have an amazing sale and get the house of your dreams.
Well, and I think knowing that it's more common than you think it is, like virtual sales just in real estate, which really seems like a product that nobody would ever buy virtually, reasonably commonly bought virtually.
Yeah. And it's just amazing because, 10 years ago or something, nobody would even consider that. And now we're doing it, fairly on the regular. So it's, things are definitely changing. And like you said, I think a lot of it was spurred by COVID and technology too. Now we do have like really awesome 3D tours. We do have FaceTime that's just like most everybody has and is available in video walkthroughs and whatnot, and a lot of very transparent information out there that, at least when I first started in real estate, that information was not available, and it was certainly not transparent that way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was going to say, and sorry, just another quick point, that, with the video previews, there is ways to repurpose it, right? Like if I have a couple clients that are shopping sort of the similar type, I'll try to reuse that property as well. Or if you have clients that are kind of on the fence trying to, debating whether they want to get into a property or not, and you see something that kind of fits the bill, it's a nice way to maybe get them off the fence and in the car.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point too for just agents out there. And another thought too is is multifamily or commercial sales. A lot of times the buyers are either institutional or they're certainly not in the area, or in a lot of times there's multiple buyers, decision makers on it, and they could be spread across, however many areas. And if you're buying a bigger, commercial property, there's just a lot of things to look at and to see. And so, that would be important for them as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. The multifamily is an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time and coming on and, talking about all these things. I think it's really interesting for anybody out there. And, and if you are a buyer or a seller and you're looking to buy, sell, invest with a top team, top agents, and a top brokerage company, know that we can do it. We can help you no matter where you're at, all 50 states, 22 different countries. We're here to help. And even if you're not in our direct area, we can help you through partners that we have in pretty much every area that is available.
Awesome. Thanks, Harley.
Well, thank you again, and have a good rest of your week.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.